This week on the Encouragers United podcast, I have 3 life lessons that I'd like to teach you as part of our all-around leader series from the high jump. Welcome to the show today. You know, back in high school, I had an experience where I finished my, middle distance running workout, 400, 800 mile kind of athlete. And I saw our high jumpers working over in their, in their area on their event, the high jump. And I kind of watched them a little bit, and I walked over there and said, I think I could do this. And the coach that was working with them said, well, why don't you give it a try? And so I watched them, and as was my custom, I could figure out an event just by watching it. I was very kinesthetic in the way that I learned. And so I just copied one of those guys, and I went and cleared, a certain height, and then they moved the bar up a little bit higher, and I cleared that and cleared it maybe 3 or 4 more times until they said, I guess maybe you could do this. And they started putting me in the high jump. I was an all-around athlete. And I've learned lots of life lessons through running an event in college called the decathlon. If you're following along, this is another installment of our all-around leader series, which explains that in life, it demands a wide variety of skills and speed and stamina and an all-around athleticism. And in life, an all-around leadership skill is what we need. And so there's many lessons that we can learn from these events in track and field. And so I'm very excited to share 3 of those with you. The first one is like I said, you started each event, each competition at a particular height. And really, this is a vertical jump competition, meaning that you can come into the competition anytime you want. And how many tragedies I've observed. I never experienced this myself, but starting too high and then missing 3 times at your opening height, and you're eliminated from the competition. Each competitor only gets 3 misses at each height. And so if you start too high, you don't place in the meet. And especially in the decathlon, as you're clearing heights to score against a standardized score table, it is very important that you get a mark and that you get yourself into a position to manage this event and to clear a bar as high as possible. And so there's this fine balance for you to save your energy and to come in a little bit later, maybe wait a little while, but don't start too high. And really the life lesson that I'd like to remind us all of is that we ought not overestimate our own abilities. We need to manage ourselves by understanding ourselves. See, I'm notorious for this sometimes because I try to cram way too much into a short period of time because I overestimate how much I can actually get done. And so with age and wisdom, I've learned to give myself more time as to predict and have a more realistic understanding of who I am, what I can do. And so in the high jump, that plays out that say, back in my day, my best jumps were in the 6'4" to 6'6", 6'8" range. And so it would make sense for me maybe to come in at 6'4", maybe start at 6'4". Now that was way too aggressive. I would often start at 5'10" or 6 feet, right? And clear that jump and make sure that I got that first one in. And then maybe skip 6'2", maybe skip 6'4", maybe go right into 6'6", where I knew I could probably clear that. But if I just started at 6'4" and I missed it 3 times, then I'm out. And I got a 0 for that event, right? I overestimated my own ability. So life lesson number 1 from the high jump, be conservative in the way that you lead. You have to understand yourself. You have to understand what your limitations are and always dial it down so that you can kind of underpromise and overproduce, right? Lesson number 2, you have to be flexible in order to be a good high jumper, right? And if you've ever seen this event, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The high jump demands that we be long and lean and very flexible to bend backwards over that crossbar. And it's really a positioning, right? You jump up, leap up off the ground, and you reach into a flexible position I can still feel it now, right? And those of us who've high jumped, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You leap up off the ground and then you have to become extremely flexible. You have to bend, but don't break. Let me give you an example of this. I've jumped and have coached individuals who were very strong. They were very, fast, and they could jump really high, but they are very inflexible, right? They're very tight. And so they stayed very rigid in the air, and then they ended up being very flat over the crossbar. Or even then, they couldn't even get to flat because they were so tight, right? And so they would trim the bar with maybe their backside or the back of their legs or something. And so they could jump really high, but they couldn't get into that position. They couldn't be flexible. And then likewise, some other people are very flexible, but they weren't very aggressive, right? And so you got to be kind of both. You've got to be aggressive off the ground and then float and be flexible in the air. And the way that plays out in life is that we have to be able to adapt, right? One of the skills that we teach our athletes in all sports really is the way to develop flexibility, because the more range of motion your muscles have, the less likely you are to get hurt. Bend, but don't break. And that's just the way it goes with relationships, right? I have to be adaptable. I have to be gracious. I have to understand this, the motive of my spouse, my friend, my coworker. I have to be flexible in those, especially in times of intense activity, conflict, times where we're trying to make decisions together. You gotta be flexible. You know what? Number 3, the last life lesson that I've learned is that if you really coordinate the high jump and you watch these high jumpers as they coordinate the clearance of their bar, you will actually be able to observe that most of their body is below the crossbar, and just at the right moment, they put enough of their body over it. And that's a bit of a physical phenomena that defies the rules of physics, right? Their center of gravity in the highest and most excellent high jumpers in the world, their center of gravity actually could pass under the bar while their body in succession passes over the bar. And so the way I want you to understand that in life is that if you coordinate your strategy, your skill to handle a situation, okay, and the timing of, when to confront someone, when to say you're sorry, when to take responsibility, when to work extra hard, there's a faith factor to us planning our work and then working that plan. And if you get it right, you might just defy physics. And I've understood that in my life when we were leading in organizations. Sometimes you may have experienced this too, is that if everything comes together, you actually will defy physics. You'll defy the rules of the game because you're so well prepared. One last story quickly. I had some tremendous excitement and a wonderful success often in the high jump when I was an athlete. And even after my college days, I dabbled a bit in competition. And I can remember when I was 30 years old, and I'll just date myself, that was 20 years ago now, I actually cleared 6 foot 5.5 inches. Don't forget the half, right? 6 foot 5.5 inches at a summer track meet where I was competing at 30 years old. And I was competing actually against some young men who were much younger than me. And I actually couldn't believe that I cleared that height. I did everything that I could do. I had my head on straight. I knew exactly where to be. I got into the best position I could, and I actually defied physics. I went 6 foot 5.5 when I was 30 years old. And that's a proud accomplishment of my life, but it was because it was well planned. I was a seasoned veteran. I'd been high jumping for, my goodness, 15 years at that point. And it all came together, right? And that's what I want to emphasize with the high jump is that 3 life lessons. Number 1, don't overestimate yourself. You got to come in at the right height and you got to manage the meet, right? Number 2, you've got to be flexible. Don't break. You got to bend, but don't break. And then finally, coordinate yourself and your efforts in a way that is so skilled that if you bring it all together, you're going to defy the rules and you're going to have a great performance. The high jump is an exciting event. It's fun to watch. It's even more exhilarating to do, trust me, for those of you that may not have had the chance to high jump. But it's a fun event to learn from. It's all those 3 principles: knowing yourself, being flexible, and defying physics. I hope this has encouraged you today. And, it's a week from Christmas. And for those of you watching on YouTube, I would encourage you to connect with us any of the 5 different ways that I've placed here at the bottom of my video. You can search for Encouragers United on any of those platforms, and I would love to connect with you. I want to encourage you to get on the website, charlesrgrimes.com. And if you would like, you could leave me a voice message on the website, and then I will try to integrate your comment or your question into an upcoming episode. Merry Christmas, everybody. Be flexible, know yourself, and don't forget to coordinate your organization and your efforts to defy physics and learn from the high jump. Be an all-around leader. Go be a blessing to somebody today. All the best.